Hello, good morning, Anurag. My name is Nana Jakum, managing partner of AGY Action Coach, a New York City business coaching company. So today you've been selected to be um, the owner of our new business Spotlight series. Congratulations on that. And we're really looking forward to hearing about your story as an entrepreneur and also sharing that with our audience. So if I may start, if you can introduce yourself, your name, your company, what you do, and how long you've been in business.
First of all, thanks, Nana, for the opportunity to reach me out. Very excited to be here. My name is Anurag Dutta. Uh, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rightbot Technologies. Rightbot is a robotic startup, and what we do is we do unloading robots to unload floor-loaded or fluid-loaded containers. What that means is when you are shipping goods in a container or a trailer by road, you might either keep the goods on pallets or you may stuff it completely inside on the floor. A lot of movement and increasingly so is happening by stuffing it in the floor because it's more economic. Right? But what it also means is it becomes that much more difficult to unload it. It requires that much more manpower. The boxes are heavy. People actually have back problems with maintaining them. So we are building robotic solutions which automates this whole process of unloading these goods out of the truck or trailer and kind of passing it on to further processing. We call our robot Sherlock because it's solving a big problem by kind of finding solutions. I would say hitherto unsolved space. It's a fairly new space in the without getting into the details of Sherlock, I think the question was how long have you been doing this? So let me break that into two parts. In terms of the startup per se, we have been at it for 4 years now. And it's been an interesting journey. We've had a set of pivots, ups and downs, raised money, made mistakes, made good decisions. Uh, Prior to Rightbot, I have fairly a decade and a half long corporate career. I was a consultant myself, like I was with Carney after my MBA. So I worked on various, I would say, strategic operational areas across Asia, Middle East, etc. Then I moved to an Indian conglomerate where I was part of the chairman office. Then I was with Carlsberg, where I was a director of the executive leadership, leading business development strategy, business, M&A. Then I ran a startup as operator, as a CEO for almost a year. And then I followed my wife into entrepreneurship in 2020. And then that's when we kind of started it.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. So, what actually motivated you to pursue this particular line of business?
So that's interesting. So let me break that into two parts, right? So one part is what you pursue entrepreneurship. The second part is what specifically you pursue growth, right? So entrepreneurship is something that I think in the last decade, a lot of professionals have this urge to try out something. Right? And I think at least in the subcontinent, which is the Indian subcontinent, the last decade and a half, has seen a lot of very successful entrepreneurs coming. So the traditional route of doing an MBA and being in a corporate world, um, henceforth, has started changing. And that kind of created those opportunities that, yeah, you see your peers doing it, then you kind of think, okay, I have the surge, why not? Right? So that was the urge. I think the trigger was when my wife kind of took the right? So she's always followed the road less traveled. Once we finally started her own company, that forced me to change cities, kind of from a new city. That also then gave me the opportunity to change jobs. And then that was the time where I actually changed the job from a very stable, large corporate to join a startup as a COO. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. That while I joined as a professional, I think in practice, I was running a startup. Right? And then after 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, I decided if I'm doing this for someone else, why not do it to myself? And that's kind of was the segue to start on my. Now, coming to Rightbot per se, how did I start off Rightbot? So I joined this program called Entrepreneur First. You might have heard of it. It's a very interesting program where they bring people of different skill sets and then let them figure out what's the best thing that they can put those skills for. So it's very useful for if you want to start up but don't have a very clear idea of what to do. That's where I was. So so I joined Entrepreneur First when I met my co-founder there. That's the biggest value part, that you find your co-founders there. My co-founder, Abhinav, he's an ex-roboticist, very smart chap, has been with here also. And I think uh, not from a work perspective, more importantly from a value system, from a working together perspective, they kind of click. And then we started looking at how do I bring my skills and his skills to work together, right? So my skills were around building businesses, understanding and breaking down supply chain problems. His skill set was using robotics in supply chain. And so when we brought it together, thought why not build a company which builds plug and play robotic solutions, make in Asia, make it for the world, solve problems which are unsolved. And that's how kind of Rightbot as a concept was incepted, the company started. Within that, we made multiple robotic solutions. It's a finally reached what I initially described as to what.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. So when you started, I can imagine you started as a one-man company, or you started
Yeah,
right off the partner. Two,
two people now.
two people. Okay. So what do you attribute your growth to over the years?
So, multiple. One is obviously uh, finding an interesting set of problems to solve. So that's step one. Because and if you are solving a problem which no one wants a solution for, or there's not enough market for, then uh, obviously nothing happens. Two is that was part one. And two was, I would say, the skill set or the capabilities that I and my co-founder brought. So because as a young company, especially if you're doing robotics, right? It's a very expensive company to build. Each prototype that you build can actually take up months and months of a senior professional's pay. So we needed money. So we needed people to believe us. So at that point of time, the two things which we had was, oh, we're solving this problem. And we two people have the capabilities to solve this problem and build a team around it and build a business. So I think that's what helped us get started. What subsequently helped was obviously we were infused with cash, but then kind of one of the biggest strengths that we have had and we continue is we have moved very fast. So kind of keeping a momentum going, even in a hard tech startup, and finding the right people to kind of join us along with it. So we have kept a lean team, but we have kind of made sure that we get people who are doers. We get people who believe in what we are doing. We get people who have a voice of their own. They don't just kind of repeat what we say. But at the same time, they are able to move at the pace that we want to move. So, and I think both of these have really helped. Obviously, I think we have found the right problems to solve. We have found the right set of customers to talk to. All of that has happened. But I would say this is the basis.
And great. So one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs starting is funding, right? You have the right skills. How did you initially get around that issue of, you said you wanted people to believe in yourself? Was that you didn't raise seed money or you got from investors? How did you go around with the funding issue?
Uh, from a funding perspective, I think
Funding for the company.
yeah, funding wise, uh, the initial because we came in from a program entrepreneur first. I think what
Mm.
happened was we obviously had a platform where we were able to pitch to them. So that is one of the big problems that many founders face, right? They don't know how to reach investors, even if they have a great idea and team. So our reach problem was solved at least because our first investors were entrepreneur first and hacks. And EF connected us to hacks. The second part was, I think, I obviously, given I have a 15-year experience post MBA from a premium college, I have a fairly strong network. So subsequent to that, I was able to kind of leverage that network to have a lot of conversations. Stuff. So that helped. And obviously, along the way, I think once investing is a very interesting business, right? When someone invests, then other people want to figure out what's happening. So once you get your initial set of money, then you get 10 more people who want to know, okay, what you're doing. Those 10 people, if you are interested, you share it with 20 people, even if they don't give you money, they'll spread the word. So I think in the robotic space today, in the space that we are working in, we are fairly well known. We have got fairly good coverage. So yeah, if someone says unloading robots, we do come into the list of names which is there.
Okay, great. So if you had to start your business from square one, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so that comes as a part of learning, right? So I said we move very fast. That's a strength, but that's also, in hindsight, something that I would actually maybe give up 20% of the speed to spend that additional 20% to dive really deep into some areas which I think for speed we gave up. So I'll give you an example. For almost a year and a half, 2 years, we tried to build solutions for markets which today, in hindsight, we believe are not ready for robotics in supply chain at scale, right? And there are various reasons. I think the alternative, which is labor, is widely available. It works out well. So in a way, I think you call it ego or you call it whatever, we try to reinvent the wheel. Right? We try to build solutions where maybe uh, the initial feeders were that some large customers gave us the sense that yes, we will take it, but maybe we didn't dive that 2 levels deeper to see that will they really scale it? Will it really reach the stage that we want it? So I think given a choice, I would, at least in the initial year, spend that additional time in really figuring out the size and need of the customer in a market, and therefore build a solution, even if it's a tough market, right? In a market which really needs that solution, rather than trying to force fit a solution into a market where I'm getting easy traction.
That's great. So what are what have your biggest learnings been as an employer since you began in business?
So I'm the oldest person in the team, right? So I'm in my early 40s. And if you have to build a deep tech company today, most of your engineers are in their 20s. So there's, and I think as times are changing, every 5 years, there's a generation gap. So I have like 3 generation gaps between me and most of my other team members, right? So I think it's very different. The the way we used to work, right? Back, and I say used to because for the last 4 years, the rest of the organization does not. We used to reach office at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning when the
Yeah,
day starts. It does not because people are absolutely fine coming at 11, 11:30, 12 and working till working from home as long as the work gets done. So I
yeah.
think I've had to change my mindset that way. I've been able to do it. A lot of that is obviously attributed to, as I said, my wife runs a deep tech company and she's very progressive in terms of how they are a completely remote working culture, right? We could never get our arms around it. So I keep getting those lessons from her. And who's my co-founder because he's also from that generation. So I think both these inputs kind of help me there. Two is um, coming from a corporate lifestyle to an entrepreneurial lifestyle. I think uh, in a corporate, we have to demonstrate ownership ourselves.
Yes.
As an entrepreneur, you have to make people demonstrate ownership, which is a very different problem. It, it's possibly the biggest challenge that we face day in and it's one of those skills that you can absolutely not test in an interview. I have read so many people say we ask people for examples of what they have done to show initiative. I have never found any interview translate to actually showing that the person takes and will take ownership. So I think I'm okay for people to be 20% lesser in skill versus the other person. But if we see that a person is showing ownership, I think we go that extra mile to give that person the opportunities to kind of grow in the organization. So I think the constant struggle, learning that we do is one, identifying and fostering ownership. And we do that in multiple ways. I think we try to make people uh, as knowledgeable about the company as possible because it's a deep tech company. We have an engineer who is possibly just 2 years out of college, but every week we still go and tell that engineer that, hey, this is what's happening on the business side, right? So that they know what's happening and they can feel that connect that, okay, if he or she is building a hardware board, how is that translating to actually my conversation with the customer? So that's something that we are trying to do. All the other ESOPs, etc., is there. I think the one thing which we try to do as much as possible is keep a very clear and transparent line of communication, so that people at any point of time know what they are doing, how is that impacting the company. So that's something we are trying. I wouldn't say we are perfect at all. I wouldn't say we are there. There are so many better companies to learn from. Uh, we must be doing something right. We haven't had a lot of attrition, but there is obviously a whole room for improvement.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely understand some of the points that you're making coming from having a corporate background myself.
Yeah,
One of the challenges that I must say is, and I want to know how you address that, employees. So how do you look for employees, and how do you find employees that actually fit into your culture?
yeah. So two things. We go a lot by references, and so our initial set of employees actually came from people whom we already knew. Uh, because and some of these people actually were helping us out even before they were employed with us, right? So they knew the vision, they knew how the company is going. That's how we got the initial set. Uh, the second one is, as I said, given we have given a lot of importance to speed, skill and capabilities plays a very huge role. But at the same time, I think during the conversation, we try to see how much risk-taking ability do they have? Because whether we like it or not, when you're talking our specific space, like robotics, you either have the large companies or you have the small companies. So, and usually people who join us would be coming in from the large companies or the larger companies. So they obviously have to take a specific amount of risk. And we don't have very deep pockets like some of the larger competitors. So many a times these people are actually willing to come down based on just the complexity or interestingness of what we are doing, and obviously the growth path that they see for themselves and the learning. So I think we give a lot of importance to these two areas when we have our conversations, because we don't want to coach a person who's just looking to come for money. Because at some point of time, there will be that other company which provides that much more money. We want to make sure that we are able to give a person the right growth opportunities, the right learning opportunities, and obviously good compensation, right? And wealth creation of. So we try to kind of balance it across these. And as I said, always keep a very clear line of communication within the organization so that everybody knows what's happening in the company. Having said
Great.
that, there is also a fairly fast feedback process so that people know how they are doing. And there is a clear opportunity to improve if improvement is.
Okay. Okay. So you have a performance system in place where you do that on a by week
So,
by
So,
annual.
yes, we have been evolving on that. I think we started with the annual process, then we moved to a 6 monthly process. Now we have finally moved to a very interesting model where we have kind of linked the company goals directly with KPIs for individuals. There's a direct linkage. Earlier, it was that, okay, these activities should lead to this, but now people derive their activities based on in Q1, you need to meet these goals. Therefore, what does it mean for software? What does it mean for mechanical? And what does it mean for hardware? And that's how we are therefore kind of evaluating company performance, team performance on a quarterly basis. And
Yeah.
those quarterly basis obviously kind of translates to fortnightly and monthly. Are we on track to kind of meet that?
Okay, great. So how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
So I think actually I've heard so many people saying that, oh, I work 20 hours, 22 hours. Like, I think post MBA, if you're a consultant, right, you've already worked 15, 16 hours a day. So you have done that. So I think if we're able to find work-life balance there, then we are able to find here. I think what's different in entrepreneurship is the level of stress is very different, right? Because uh, you are the person who's kind of taking all the decisions. In your previous companies, if you were the CEO, you would look at the board to take a decision. If you were the COO, you would look at the CEO to take a decision. Right now, you're like a 15, 20 member team. You're the CEO, you are the business development manager, you are everything. And then the jobs of so many people and your investors' money also can kind of. So I would say what's changed is the stress levels, and that obviously needs to be managed. What has really helped is we are two entrepreneurs in the house, right? And we are doing two very different businesses, but our problems most of the time remain the same. I can fib about my team to my wife. She can fib about that. She can fib about her investors. I can fib about my investors. We discuss, oh, should this clause be in this contract or not? So that helps a lot. And obviously, we have our two dogs, we have our pets.
Great, great. What are some of the common misconceptions about running a business and how do you address it?
I think I already alluded to that. Right? I think running a business does not make you a owner. It actually makes you an owner and a janitor.
Yeah,
So I think in an early stage business, that's the common misconception, which a lot of people think that, oh, I want to be my own, uh, what's it called? Be my own boss, right? I
yeah,
think that's a big misconception. You're never your own boss. You are an employee to your employees because now you have to retain those people who many a times will have a generation gap. You are an employee to your customers because you have to be at the beck and call. You, are, you can see my dog's behind. I think she's also agreed. So you are an employee to each and every person there is, right? So I think that's one big misconception that one, you become your boss, but actually no. Because I think it all comes back from the same space, right? People believe being employed creates anxiety and stress, and therefore, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll be able to manage that bit. At least every entrepreneur that I've seen, at least the initial part of the journey, which is the first 5 years, 6 years, the stress level actually goes up rather than coming down. So I think that's a misconception. That's something I would say it would be great if people are aware about, because then it helps you take that conscious decision. Right? You're actually not moving towards a more stress-free life. You're moving towards a more stressful life with obviously the opportunity to create wealth for being stress-free at a later point. But yeah,
that's a good point. Last couple of questions. What advice are you going to give to a younger version of yourself, somebody younger trying to do the same thing? What advice would you give to them?
I would say take the leap which I took at post my 35, right? Much earlier. Because irrespective of all the anxiety and all this stress, I think I am happiest doing what I'm doing now versus what I've done in the last decade. And um, I, I, I think I inherently am a more risk-taking person. But when I look at my peers, I hear so many of them saying, "Oh, how can I take a risk now? I have so many liabilities. I have so many stuff." Um, I think the kind of risks or the kind of leaps or just the kind of energy that I would have had at 25 is obviously different from what I have at 35, 36. So, in hindsight, I would have loved to start a business in my right out of my MBA or 1 or 2 years post my MBA. Learn if it fails with me, right? So I think today we are in a world where failed entrepreneurs are actually wonderful recruits because they have done it, they've seen what does not work. So yeah, I think as a younger self, that's what I would have kind of asked myself to do as a profession.
Great. So the final question that I have for you is, what is your exit plan?
Uh,
Okay.
from this business.
From this business life, like, are you looking to sell it eventually? Are you looking to make it passive eventually? What are you looking to get out of the business?
Uh, I think again, I keep referring to my generation. I think my generation and maybe your generation comes from a space where businesses need to make money, right? They can't just
Yeah,
guzzle.
yeah,
So we are building the business in that way. That while today a lot of money is going into tech development, but very quickly we should be able to reach a cash positive or EBITDA positive, PAT positive business.
yeah.
And having said that, I think as consultants, we are also realistic people, right? Robotics as a category, I think is usual exits happen through acquisitions, right? There's just one IPO or two IPOs, one of which is worth done where one is not done. So in the next 2 to 3 years, I think, depending on how the market evolves, we are open to kind of exiting through an acquisition once the business stabilizes and the tech is
Mm,
kind of something that really adds value. But having said that, we would always build the business with strong fundamentals that if the acquisition does not happen, or we as founders and as our investors who decide that acquisition is not the best route, the business can sustain itself and then grow again.
great, great. So anything else that you want to share with us? And also, where do people find you? Where would they, in case people looking at this are really intrigued with what you're doing, how would they be able to find you, your company, more information?
So I think right now we are at the stage where, as a product, we are getting into pilots. So our website will give a flavor of what we are doing. LinkedIn will give a flavor of what we are doing, and through social media, LinkedIn itself will kind of keep posting updates of what's happening. Me and my co-founder are very active on LinkedIn. So anyone writes, I think we respond if it's relevant within a day, 2 days, within a week. And yeah, the other uh, avenue to find us within the next 6 to 12 months would be the right robotic conferences, because that's when we are kind of planning to kind of start presenting what we are building in those conferences. And yeah, I think we obviously, being a B2B business, will never be on TV marketing. So that's there. Apart from that, yeah, I think we've largely covered a lot, man. You don't really have much to add. I love the conversation, and I think it was good to meet a fellow consultant with a similar number of years who understands the generation gap that we are facing, right, when we work with younger engineers. It was fun.
Yeah.
I like it. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much for this time for your interview. You know, Anurag, and it was a pleasure having you and
It
your
was a pleasure.
company for this
Yeah,
episode of our Business Spotlight.
great. Thanks for having me, Nana. It was a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, looking forward to staying connected and following your other interviews which come on your page.
Thank you.